Actually, it's interesting. Sounds rather sort of bizarre, but I did go to Diana's coffin the day after I'd written it.
The innocence about her, you just thought, wow, this girl is knockout.
For years, the story of Princess Diana's tragic death has been told from the perspective of the royal family, the media, and the public. But now, Princess Diana's brother, Spencer, is revealing hidden details, moments that were never discussed, and truths that challenge everything people thought they knew. Why was the funeral procession so painful for Diana's sons, William and Harry? What happened behind closed doors when the royal family first learned of her death? Join us as we uncover the heartbreaking reality of what Diana's brother has revealed. Funeral procession of Princess Diana. The world stood still on September 6, 1997. Millions of people lined the streets of London, while over 2.5 billion more watched from their television screens across the globe. The funeral of Princess Diana was a moment of collective mourning, a day never to be forgotten in British history. But among all the sorrowful images of that day, one stood out more than any other. Two young boys, Prince William and Prince Harry, walking behind their mother's coffin. The sight was heartbreaking. William, only 15, and Harry, just 12, marched with quiet, somber faces as the crowd wept around them. The weight of grief, duty, and expectation all pressed down on them as they took each step. It was an image that would define their childhood, haunting Harry for decades. And what most people didn't know then was that this was never their choice. The person who fought against it the hardest, their uncle, Charles Spencer. What you're about to witness is heartbreaking, so keep watching to discover why. Charles Spencer is Diana's younger brother, the man who had grown up alongside her, the one person who understood the pain she had endured within the royal family. When the burial committee informed him that Diana's sons would walk in the procession, his reaction was instant and firm. Never. According to Spencer, he had been speaking with a Buckingham Palace courtier, discussing the arrangements for the funeral when the plan was casually mentioned to him. The idea alone stunned him. The thought of two young boys, fresh in their grief, being paraded in front of the world seemed unthinkable to him. He refused outright. She would never have wanted them to do this, Spencer recalled saying. But his protests were met with cold resistance. The response from the palace was direct. It has been decided. But Spencer didn't back down easily. He pushed, argued, and demanded that the plan be reconsidered. He pointed out that it was cruel, unnecessary, and profoundly unnatural to make children walk behind their mother's coffin, with cameras zooming in on their every expression. But his words fell on deaf ears. And then came the lie. At some point in the discussion, Spencer was told that William and Harry wanted to do it. That changed everything for him. If this were their decision, then he would not interfere. He wouldn't force them into something they didn't want. So reluctantly, he let the matter go. But the truth finally came out after many years. Prince Harry admitted that they had never indeed been given a choice. They had simply been told what to do. As a 12-year-old, Harry had no power to refuse. He followed orders. Spencer, who had believed he was honoring their wishes, later realized he had been misled. He had unknowingly stepped aside for something he would never have allowed had he known the truth. The morning of the funeral was heavy with sorrow. The streets were lined with grieving faces, people holding flowers, handwritten notes, and photographs of the princess they had loved so much. The air felt different, thick with grief, shock, and disbelief. And then they appeared. Charles Spencer walked beside Prince Charles, Prince Philip, and the two boys. The cameras zoomed in on William and Harry. Their faces were pale, and their eyes were cast downward. Every step they took was scrutinized, every movement analyzed. The world saw them as brave, as dignified. But Spencer saw something else. He saw two children burdened with a duty they should never have been given. The walk from Kensington Palace to Westminster Abbey was long and painful. The sound of sobbing thundered from the crowd, but the boys never broke. They held themselves together, never letting a single tear fall in public. Harry later described it as numb, as if his emotions had utterly shut down. The entire event felt strange to him, like something happening to someone else. For Spencer, the pain of that day wasn't just about losing his sister. It was about witnessing what he saw as an injustice. He had lost the battle to protect his nephews from this moment, and he knew there was nothing he could do now except walk beside them. But what Spencer did next left everyone speechless. Spencer's speech and the beginning. As the world watched, Spencer took the podium inside Westminster Abbey to deliver his eulogy. No one knew exactly what he would say. What followed was one of the most potent, direct speeches ever at a royal funeral. He didn't speak about Diana. He spoke for her. Spencer described his sister as the most hunted person of the modern age. He blamed the media and the institutions that had failed to protect her. The royal family listened as he spoke words that cut deep. The Queen remained emotionless. Prince Charles showed no reaction, but the rest of the world heard exactly what Spencer was saying. Then came the moment that made headlines around the world. Spencer promised that Diana's blood family, not the Windsors, would always protect and guide William and Harry. It directly challenged the royal family's authority, a declaration that Diana's sons would not be left entirely in their hands. The response was something rarely seen at a royal event: applause. The crowd inside the Abbey, which included dignitaries, celebrities, and political figures, broke into spontaneous clapping. It was unheard of at a funeral. But at that moment, Spencer spoke about what many felt. Diana had been wronged, and someone was finally saying it out loud. Sadly, things would not go the way Spencer had planned. As powerful as his words were, Spencer would later admit that keeping that promise was impossible. William and Harry were already deeply embedded in the royal system. There was no way he could remove them from it or personally raise them as Diana might have wished. The monarchy controlled their future, and he could do nothing about it. But that is not all. This is just the beginning of the story. Years later, Prince Harry would speak openly about how deeply that funeral affected him. He admitted that, in today's world, such a thing would never be allowed to happen to grieving children. Times had changed largely because of Diana's influence, but no one had fought hard enough to stop it back then. For Charles Spencer, the funeral procession remained one of the most painful moments of his life. He has never softened his stance or changed his view that what happened to William and Harry that day was wrong. For the boys themselves, it was an unforgettable moment that would eventually lead Harry to question everything about the institution he was born into. But the funeral itself was just the public goodbye. The days leading up to it were filled with confusion, silence, and frustration. The world mourned, but the royal family remained quiet. Their response, or lack thereof, only added to the anger. And that's where we turn next. The moment Charles Spencer first received the devastating phone call, how the royal family reacted behind closed doors, and the chaos that unfolded in the immediate aftermath of Diana's death. Let's return to the early hours of August 31st, 1997, when the world changed forever. In a tunnel in Paris, a black Mercedes carrying Princess Diana crashed while trying to outrun paparazzi. The impact was brutal. The car crumpled like a tin can. Inside, Diana was still alive, but barely. The news spread fast, first as whispers, then as breaking headlines. The world didn't know it yet, but within hours, the most famous woman on the planet would be gone. And when the confirmation finally came, Diana, Princess of Wales, was dead. But behind the scenes, a different kind of chaos was unfolding before the public even knew what had happened. Miles away in South Africa, Diana's brother, Charles Spencer, was asleep when the phone rang. It was a call he would never forget. The voice on the other end was calm but firm. Diana had been in a car accident in Paris. She was severely injured. No further details. Spencer sat up in bed, his mind racing. An accident? He knew how the press hounded her, how they chased her relentlessly. Had they pushed her too far this time? He waited, heart pounding for more news. Minutes turned into an hour. Then came the second call. This time, the voice was different, colder. "I'm sorry, sir. She didn't make it." He knew exactly who to blame. The paparazzi. The same photographers who had hounded her for years had been chasing her car that night. But there was no time to grieve. The world was about to discover, and nothing would ever be the same. The reaction of the royal family will leave you completely speechless. Initial reaction of the royal family. When news of Diana's death hit the airwaves, the reaction was immediate.
Diana, Princess of Wales, has in fact been killed.
People poured into the streets in tears. Grown men, women, and children sobbed openly, their faces buried in their hands. Outside Buckingham Palace, outside Kensington Palace, everywhere Diana had ever touched, flowers piled up by the thousands. It wasn't just mourning, it was heartbreak. But something strange was happening at the top. The royal family was silent through it all. For hours, then days, there was no public statement, no national address. There was no sign that they were mourning with the people. Instead, they remained at Balmoral Castle in Scotland.
Decades after the tragic 1997 Paris car crash that claimed Princess Diana's life, her brother has finally broken his silence. What he revealed has left the world, and even the royals, absolutely speechless.
Hidden from view. At first, people assumed they were in shock, but as time passed, the silence felt like something else. It was indifference. Why wasn't the Queen saying anything? Why wasn't the flag at Buckingham Palace lowered to half-mast? Why weren't Charles and the boys in London? The anger started to rise. The newspapers, usually respectful of the monarchy, turned against them. Headlines screamed betrayal. "Your people are mourning. Where are you? Show us you care." The British public felt abandoned. This was Diana, the woman they had loved, the people's princess. And the monarchy, it seemed, didn't know what to do. While the world demanded answers, two boys were suffering in silence. William and Harry were in Balmoral when they were told. Their father, Prince Charles, had to sit them down and explain. Their mother had died in a car crash. She wasn't coming back. Harry, just 12 years old, asked the same question repeatedly. "Is she gone?" They had last spoken to her on the phone the day before. It had been a quick, casual conversation, one of those call-you-later moments that now felt unbearable. They would have said so much more if they had known it was the last time. In those first few days, they were kept from the public eye. They stayed at Balmoral, surrounded by their father, grandmother, and a royal family not known for showing emotion. Years later, Harry would admit that he felt confused. The world was crying, but there was just silence inside the palace. No one talked about Diana. No one comforted them the way they needed. But that is not all. Outside, the pressure on the royal family kept growing. Eventually, the Queen had no choice but to act. The outrage was too loud to ignore. On September 5th, 5 days after Diana's death, she finally addressed the nation. Sitting in front of cameras, she spoke of a remarkable human being and praised Diana as a loving mother.
"I want to pay tribute to Diana myself. She was an exceptional and gifted human being, and especially for her devotion to her two boys."
She said she understood the people's grief and that they had lost someone irreplaceable. But was it too late? For many, yes. By then, the damage had been done. The monarchy had looked out of touch, cold and distant at a time when warmth was needed most. Diana's death revealed a gap between the royal institution and the people it was meant to serve. Even after the Queen's speech, resentment lingered. People had seen the difference between Diana and the royals for years. She was one of them, open and human. The monarchy? They were something else, untouchable, removed. And now, in the wake of her death, that divide had never been clearer. Diana was gone, but her impact was far from over. The funeral was coming, and with it, one of the most painful, controversial moments in royal history, the decision to make William and Harry walk behind her coffin. It would be a moment that changed them forever. Remember, we mentioned earlier that was a decision that not everyone agreed with, and one man, in particular, fought to stop it: Charles Spencer. Spencer's fight to keep the boys away from the coffin was a far-reaching one and didn't stop after the burial. And that's where we go next. The battle between Charles Spencer and the royal family over the fate of two grieving boys. Things are about to get a lot more interesting. Stick with us. Criticism of the royal family. Charles Spencer never stayed silent about what he saw as the royal family's failure in Diana's life and death. From the moment she married Prince Charles, she was thrown into a system that didn't protect her. And even after she died, Spencer believed that same system continued to fail her. His anger was more than personal. It was public. And if you think it ended after the burial, you are wrong. Over the years, Spencer spoke out in interviews, refusing to let people forget the suffering his sister endured. Spencer always made one clear: Diana was never truly accepted by the royal family. She had gone from being a 19-year-old girl, full of life, to a woman trapped in a cold, rigid system. She was expected to smile, follow the rules, and ignore her pain. And when her marriage to Charles fell apart, she was pushed further away. Spencer repeatedly said that Diana had been cast out, left to deal with a life of constant media harassment without the protection she should have had. Even after her divorce, she was still the mother of the future king. She was still one of the most famous women in the world. Yet, instead of keeping her safe, the royal family distanced themselves. Spencer was furious about this. He made it clear in multiple interviews that they knew the press was hunting her. They knew she had no proper security. And yet, they did nothing. The result? A woman who was constantly running. And on August 31st, 1997, that running finally caught up with her. If there was one moment that defined Spencer's anger, it was his speech at Diana's funeral. Standing in front of a grieving nation, he didn't hold back. He called out the media for chasing his sister to her death. But he also sent a direct message to the royal family. He said Diana needed no royal title to continue to generate her particular brand of magic. It was a bold statement. In other words, Diana's power had never come from the monarchy. It had come from her. She didn't need them. They needed her. But Spencer's final statement was what shocked everyone. He promised that her sons, William and Harry, would be protected from the same fate. He said that Harry and William's blood family would do all they could to continue the imaginative and loving way the royal family was steering these exceptional young men. Many saw this as a direct attack on the royals. Spencer was making it clear: you failed, Diana, but we won't let you forget her sons. The reaction was explosive. Inside Westminster Abbey, the Queen sat stone-faced. The royal family didn't applaud. How could they? But outside, the people did. The streets of London erupted in cheers. Spencer had said what millions were thinking. For the first time, the monarchy was being called out, not in whispers, but in front of the world. Spencer never softened his words. In later interviews, he described the royal family's treatment of Diana as inhumane. He said she had been used when they needed her and discarded when they didn't. He also revealed that she had turned to him in deep distress. She had called him, crying, telling him how lonely she was, how trapped she felt, how no one was listening. And yet, nothing changed. His criticism of the royal family remains one of the most honest, raw accounts of Diana's life behind palace walls. He never sugarcoated the truth. He never tried to make peace. Because for him, Diana's story wasn't just about tragedy, it was about injustice. And that injustice didn't end with her. It continued with her sons, William and Harry, especially Harry, who later said he felt the same lack of protection his mother did. You are about to witness how Harry, years later, would take the fight even further, walking away from the royal family completely. Harry's fight against the system. Spencer didn't just blame the institution. He blamed specific people. He believed those within the palace wanted Diana to be broken. People didn't like how popular she was and how much attention she took away from the rest of the royal family. In one interview, Spencer said, "Diana was the most hunted person of the modern age, and she was left to face that alone." Even after Diana died, Spencer believed the royal family failed her again. He was deeply frustrated with how her funeral was handled. He never agreed with making William and Harry, just 15 and 12 years old, walk behind her coffin in front of millions. He thought it was cruel. Spencer fought against it. He argued with palace officials, saying the boys were too young. But in the end, his protests didn't matter. The decision was made. Years later, Harry himself admitted it had traumatized him. William, too, said it was something no child should have to do. Spencer had been right, but once again, the royal family hadn't listened. Even now, decades later, Spencer's words still echo. Diana's story didn't end with her death. It lived on through her sons, especially Harry. Charles Spencer had spent years speaking out about how the institution failed Diana, but in the end, Harry would take action. He would walk away, refusing to let history repeat itself. From the time he was a child, Harry was compared to his mother. He had her rebellious streak, warmth, and most of all, deep discomfort with the royal system. He never forgot how she was treated. He remembered the press hounding her, the way she was left to struggle alone, and most painfully, how she was gone in an instant, chased to her death by the very media she had spent years trying to escape. That trauma shaped him. In interviews, he later admitted that every time he saw paparazzi cameras flashing, it took him back to that night in 1997. He saw history repeating itself, not just with himself, but with Meghan, his wife. That was the moment he did something that shook the whole royal family. He left. He saw Meghan facing the same treatment Diana had endured. Negative headlines, attacks from within the palace, a lack of support. And just like Diana, Meghan was struggling. He refused to let it happen again. In one of his most emotional interviews, he said he saw history repeating itself and was helpless to stop it. But unlike Diana, he could escape. And so, he did. In 2020, Harry and Meghan made the shocking decision to leave the royal family. They moved to the US, cutting official ties with the institution that had defined their lives. It was the boldest move any royal had made in modern history. But for Harry, it wasn't rebellion. It was survival. Even in his departure, Harry was following his mother's path. Diana had tried to break free in the years before she died. She had distanced herself from the monarchy, found a new life outside royal duties.
Decades after the tragic 1997 Paris car crash that claimed Princess Diana's life, her brother has finally broken his silence. What he revealed has left the world, and even the royals, absolutely speechless.